Hey, Giant fans. This episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you in part by Locked On NFL. The NFL season is about to begin and nobody covers it like the Locked On Podcast Network. August 30th through September 8th, the Locked On NFL podcast is previewing every team and every division with the help of Odyssey's lineup of NFL experts. Follow the Ultimate Season Preview 2021 feed on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts to tune in beginning August 30th.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. Patricia Traina here with you, and joining me on today's show is David Turner, former NFL scout, president of Maverick Sports Consulting. David is really the guy to go to as far as I'm concerned when it comes to evaluating some of these guys in the preseason. And we're going to talk about some of the Giant players who participated in the 17-13 loss to the Cleveland Browns. Don't get too caught up about the score, folks. There was a lot more to come out of this game, a lot of positive things to come out of this game. David and I are going to break it all down for you. And David, first off, let me welcome you to the program, and glad to see you're doing a little bit better in your recovery.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, this week's a little bit better, and hopefully, the road's sound and no setbacks. So appreciate you having me on to talk about another great Giants game.
Absolutely. And we have a lot to talk about. And David, we have got to start with the offensive line. Now, that is a unit that everybody has asked about. Last week, they didn't play very well against the Jets. I think they had something like 10 quarterback hits, 5 sacks, ton of pressures. This week, I believe they went through 3 quarters of play, didn't give up a sack. The pressures were down, and really, you look at the stat line, I think there were 2 sacks, and one of the sacks was a coverage sack. Not a bad showing, I would say, from this second string offensive line. What do you think the difference was? They had a couple new guys in there. Larson was in there. Harrison was in there. I don't think they played last week for the Giants. So what do you see as the difference? Did those veterans kind of settle things down, or did you see something else that maybe made the difference?
Well, to me, it was Slade was on the bench longer until the fourth quarter. And then once he came in, they started giving up pressure because he's just a swinging gate out there at right tackle. And I'm not trying to just pick on a young man, but it's just obvious. Before that, the offensive line, like you said, was the other folks involved were pretty sound. But once he got in there, the Weaver, I think it was, for Cleveland, just was able to go up and under and speed rush him most of the time. So I think the offensive line saw growth, saw potential this week. You saw less mental errors. Everybody was sliding the right way. They were picking up the right responses. The running backs seemed to be picking up their responsibility on blitz pickups and pass protection. So it just seemed like a much more sound unit. And again, last week, as we were saying, this is something that they need to get better on, we were both saying, let's not bash them. It's week 1. And they got a lot of tape to learn off of. I mean, when you learn from your mistakes, it's a better learning lesson than a coach telling you what you did wrong. Now you can watch and see yourself doing something wrong. And we saw growth on that unit this week. We saw them moving up into a better situation. And I really like the running backs this week picking up the blitzes. They did a really nice job with their fits up with the offensive line. The tight ends came, helped out, did a lot of chipping, blocking with them as well. So I think it conceptually, as a pass blocking concepts and calls, were more concise, and they were picked up better this week too. So kudos to the coaching staff to either simplifying the calls or putting in some protections that they thought their players would be successful at, and just using and utilizing those guys. So that was a good thumbs up for the coach too, because I know we talked about the coach last week, and some people were jumping on the O-line coach, and I said, no, let's give him a little time, right? Oh, and we saw a little time this week. He did much better with that unit this week.
You make a good point. You mentioned the role of the running backs picking up blitzes and tight ends. I thought Caden Smith playing for Evan Ingram, who didn't play, he was part of a group of starters who didn't play this week. I thought Caden Smith had himself a nice game just on a first glance. And, can you just talk a little bit about the role, because a lot of people, they say offensive line, they're quick to point to the five guys up front, but really, you do have the running backs with the blitz pickups on passing downs, and the tight ends they play such a big role in the run blocking aspect of it. And I think a lot of people don't really appreciate that. So can you just talk a little bit more about that and maybe some of the general assignments those guys have in terms of the run blocking and the pass blocking?
Sure. I mean, often the tight ends on the run blocking have to seal the corners for the running backs to get around. We saw that on the 2-point conversion where the defensive end, I think it was 91 for Cleveland this week, penetrated and kind of pushed the tight end back into the backfield, which then gave Brightwell a very limited lane to run into, and then he ran into defenders that the fullback was supposed to kick out. So it's all in unison. It's a dance routine. Everybody has to hit their marks in order for it to work right. And we saw Rhinson John not be a really good run blocker today, number 44, but he was a good pass blocker. And I thought I'm sorry, not pass blocker, pass catcher. He was good out of the backfield, running downfield, doing things there. Whereas 49, Jake Hoshman, I thought he showed up today as a really good complementary, maybe even H-back, where he could move around off the ball, run routes, block, be physical at the line of scrimmage. He was able to handle linebackers, not just safeties. So, I mean, he was really physical with people today that stood off the film when I was watching it. But if you don't have the running backs and offensive line in line and in sequence when they're in their fits for pass blocking, often it'll look like the lineman went the wrong way when the back went the wrong way, in a call or a slide. And if your offensive line, if they're making a late check and the running back doesn't hear it, and that'll screw up pass blocking every time. That's why you have to be careful. It's not just about the five up front, but it's the sixth guy, which is often the tight end, or the running back that screw up pass blocking because they just didn't hear the call, didn't get the check, or they went the wrong way and exposed a weakness for the defense to exploit with a blitz.
We talk about the offensive line. We talk about, just the whole operation. Let's talk a little bit about some of the skill position players. Mike Glennon had a better game. I think he went 10 of 13, and basically a game manager's type of role. Obviously preseason, you're not expecting anything too fancy to come out of the offensive game plan. Devonta Booker, the backup running back, I thought had a better showing this week, running a little bit more decisively, hitting the hole harder. Very encouraged by that. David Sills had another good game. What did you see from the skill position players? I mean, I got to think some of these positions, some of these decisions that the coaches are going to have to make at receiver, maybe even at running back, Eli Penny getting some H-back snaps. I mean, we're talking some tough decisions coming up here.
Well, that's where you want to be as a personnel guy. You don't want to have easy decisions when it comes to cutdowns, because if they're easy decisions, then you didn't pack the team wealthy enough with talent going into training camp. That's what I've always told my staffs when we get ready to make cuts. I'm like, listen, if we don't have hard decisions, if we're not in here fighting for guys and, struggling with who we should cut and who we should keep, then we didn't do our job in the offseason and constructing the roster. So I agree with you. I think this roster's got some depth to it in certain areas that it's going to be hard to make decisions, and receivers one of them. I think Pettis today really showed that he was not to me, he's not a strong candidate for the roster. I think still Sills and Board are making a really strong plays to be that fifth type player in the practice squad, maybe kind of guy for them, because both of them had good games. And Sills, that one catch for the touchdown was like, whoa, here you go. That's what you're looking for. And he had a really strong game again last week too. Plus, he's a bigger body guy. I think he could be a gunner and a vice on special teams for you. He can help you out more than Pettis. Pettis, to me, is just not a guy that I would be looking as a strong competitor and contributor for the Giants this year. When you go into Glennon, he did have a very game manager. So did Brian Lewerke, game manager style stuff. Lewerke obviously is a little bit more versatile. He can run a little more. You saw him on that one quarterback keeper late in the game. He got out and ran like 10 yards, whatever, 12 yards, picked up the first down. This offense was very basic today. To me, it looked like they took their time, went really slow with what they called, and they didn't call a lot of complicated stuff. It was a simple down, and that was good to see because I think they really got some good evaluational tape out of this. They moved some players around in different positions on defense a lot, on offense a little bit, just to see what they can do, which was good because it's always good to know what you got before you get into season and don't know. And using the second preseason game like this to move some people maybe out of comfort zones, out of spots that they were able to evaluate them in different roles will give them a better understanding of now when cut down day goes and happens, if they are looking to add somebody, what is a true need, because they know the backups aren't going to bring any kind of role for them in that position. So I like that. Brightwell to me ran way too high today, though. His pad level was way too up. He was taking on hits chest wise, not only in running the ball but in running after the catch and stuff. So he needs to learn to get his pad level down for sure. I really, like you said, I thought Booker and Clement, they had better games today. They knew their roles better, looked more comfortable running in it. And like you said, Caden Smith looked better at tight end too. So, we saw some glimmers of hope here and there.
Hey, Giant fans, it's that time of year again, and all eyes are now turning to football as teams are back on the gridiron for the football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. Get all the updated odds, props, and contests, including the $500,000 NFL Mega Contest and the $200,000 NFL Survivor Contest, open now at BetOnline. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 100% welcome bonus when you use the code LOCKEDON. Be sure to take advantage of their opening day super promo. Make a bet on the Thursday, September 9th season opener between the Super Bowl champion Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys. And if you lose, your wager will be refunded up to $25. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, from football, basketball, boxing, right to horse racing. Don't wait to take advantage of all the great offers for the 2021 season. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, David, we are going to switch over now to the defense. A lot of good things, a lot of things that I think they still need to work on. Got to start off with the run defense. I did not think they did as good a job with setting the edge with the run defense. I don't know if it was Zimenez or Anderson. I saw a couple, times when they just got washed out of the picture, didn't set the edge. I mean, what did you see from the Giants' run defense as a whole?
I think you're spot on. I'll be honest with you. You're spot on with your assessment there. They gave up 160 yards rushing today, and they just did not show good run fits. The linebackers were not closing down the lanes. Sometimes they were trying to undercut, backdoor as I call it, the block versus come over top, and then the running backs were getting wide open lanes on the outside. Safeties, like we were talking in pass blocking, the running backs and tight ends have to fit right in there with the offensive line. Well, same with run stopping, the safeties and outside linebackers have to fit with the D line. And today the fits for those safeties weren't good. You did not see good safety fits running up in the holes and scraping right off the outside edges of the outside linebackers and defensive ends to be there to meet the running backs in the hole as they turn upfield. They often were taking shallow angles. They were coming straight downhill. They were not coming up to with a purpose and plan.
When you look at the inside linebacker spot, Carter Coughlin had a pretty good game, but just with him, coverage, I think, is his biggest biggest vice. Tate Crowder didn't play this week. I mean, who becomes that second inside linebacker in the base defense, or does it not really matter, because they're not really in the base defense that much anyway?
I'm a big build your base to win your division, because if you don't have a strong base defense, I could care less about all this other big nickels and checks and crap. That I know we're a PG film here, so I'm stumbling on some words that are going through my head. But for me, that crap just doesn't float. So, it's like you really have to build your base. If you don't have a strong base, then everything else is going to crumble, because then that will force you to stay in your exotic looks more. And there is going to be a 3rd and 1 that you need your base to come up big for you. There's going to be a 3rd and 3 where, the offense is going to check into 21 personnel, and you're going to have to answer the call. Look at the division. I watched Washington play this weekend, and I watched Dallas play this weekend, and both of them are going to run some 21 and 12 personnel, which is going to force you to be more in your base than an 11 look that Philly's going to run. Philly will run more 11 look because of their offensive line's not that good, so they're going to let Hurst run around out there and have 3 receivers in the pattern a lot. But Washington and Dallas, you'll watch, they're going to run a lot of 21 personnel and 12 personnel, which will check in your base. So you have to build this base to win the division.
So you're not feeling really warm and fuzzy about the Giants base just yet? Is that fair to say?
I think they have some work. And again, we didn't see the starters. Like before we went on air, you and I went through the list of who didn't play. So we're not getting a fair evaluation of who's going to really be playing on Sundays. They're second level defenders. That's where I have a question of their depth up front and what they're going to have once the first person on the starting defense goes down, who's filling that gap. That's where my question marks start to pop up.
Okay, fair enough. Now I got to talk about the secondary. Sam Beal, I didn't think had a very good game. Madre Harper, I don't think had the best game. I mean, Beal in particular.
Harper was the huckleberry today. Harper was the huckleberry today. They went after Harper 3 times down the red zone that I counted, and then out in the field at least another few times.
And Beal, Beal gave up a big 3rd down conversion towards the end of the second half. I mean, how do you not know where the sticks are at that point? I thought that was poor field awareness of him. And I also saw, I don't have an official count, but there were some missed tackles by him. I mean, what do you do with him? This is a guy who Dave, I know, was very high on him a few years ago when they drafted him in the 3rd round of the supplemental draft. And then I remember the following year, Dave said, if he was coming out, we would have had a 2nd round grade on him. Is this kid salvageable at this point, given all the time he's missed, or is there just something lacking in his game that is just showing up now?
Well, again, I think like you said, the only way players get better is by taking reps. And he hasn't had a lot of reps, even though he's been out with the injuries and different things. It costs him reps, right? So without reps, talent's always just going to be the, potential. And as a coach has always told me before, potential is a coach killer. So, you got to be careful. You walk the line. The kid's got all the potential that you look for in the position, but can he truly pull off the skill set on Sundays that is needed to be pulling off, so therefore you can win ball games? Beal's time, he's on the hourglass, and this preseason his sand is starting to run out. So I as much as Dave likes him and would champion probably him, if the kid's not practice squad eligible, then I would doubt that he makes the squad this year.
Yeah, I think he is practice squad eligible now because of the new rules and whatnot. A guy I want to talk about, though, this is a guy we haven't really spoken about before. He's kind of making a push. I don't know if there's going to be a place for him on the 53, but defensive lineman David Moa has been quietly making quite a push. And, might he challenge BJ Hill, who was in the final year of his rookie deal, a draft pick from a few years ago? Might Moa be able to beat this guy out?
I don't think he'll beat him out, but dang, he's going to, if he doesn't get picked up on somebody else's 53, he'll be a gem on the practice squad. And, he might not be there that long. He might get, brought up at some point quickly as soon as there's an injury or something. But, no, I've known David since college. I scouted him coming out. Unbelievable young man, just a great young person. Has faced a lot of injury adversity in his career, and he's a guy that I love that he's playing so well right now, because he's one of those ones that you root for and that you like, gosh, he deserves it. That's Moa, and so I'm glad he's playing well. I think he's on the practice squad to start the season if somebody else from another team doesn't pick him up.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And another guy who I think is going to slip on the roster, just based on the injury situation, I could see maybe Trent Harris, outside linebacker, because, Ellerson Smith at this point, he's going on IR. I would be stunned if he doesn't start the year on IR, given all the time he's missed because of his injury, which, you and I have talked about him before and how disappointing it was, because we wanted to see what this kid brought to the table. At this point, I don't see him making the 53. I think he's going to go on IR, which may open up an opportunity for Trent Harris, who's had a pretty good summer so far.
Yeah, I think I think Ellerson Smith to me fits more the defensive end the defensive end role for this defense, because he's longer and he's like 265, whatever. I don't see Ellerson standing up. That's just my opinion. That's why I want to see him in preseason, to see how he played, to see more about what tools does he really have. Can he maybe put on 8 more pounds and be, up there with Williams and Lawrence, up top, and be that third rotational guy in that situation, or if they need to stand him up and he's got to be behind Carter and run that role. I think you're right. Trent Harris has had a really good first 2 games here. He's had a really good. I would like to see more active hands for freeing up and pass rush from him, but I think those are some traits and some tools he can learn. He's still a young kid, and initially he'll be a special teamer that will deliver you some really quality reps. And if he's called into action, you got a guy that he looks battle ready.
Giant fans, we have plenty more coming up on this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. But first, Built Bar is a healthy, low-carb, low-sugar, and high-protein treat that will satisfy your sweet tooth. Choose from 9 amazing flavors plus the occasional limited-time offering available in nut and nut-free varieties. Visit BuiltBar.com and get 15% off your first order with the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15 at BuiltBar.com for 15% off your first order. Plenty more coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast, Giant fans. But first, no matter what you need for your car or truck, Rock Auto is sure to have it in its extensive online catalog. RockAuto.com offers brand name parts for every make, model, and manufacturer at highly competitive prices and ships right to your door. Visit RockAuto.com and be sure to write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know we sent you. That's RockAuto.com. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. Now, David, you brought up special teams, so let's kind of pivot to special teams there. And I got to start with my man, Cam Brown. Wow. I mean, how often do you see a guy, what is he, like 6'5"? He's a big guy, a lot of length, strong as an ox. A lot of times on special teams and gunner play, we can probably both admit last year was a problem for the Giants. He's not going to get beaten very often. And I even question whether teams are going to be able to double team him if he lines up as a gunner. What did you see from him in this week and as well as last week?
I didn't notice him last week. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I didn't notice him last week, but this week, yeah, he was a man that definitely understands his role and his path to make this team is on special teams. And, and it's hard. A lot of people don't understand, like, when you go into training camp, 42 of your roster spots are almost committed to because of contract, language and money paid out. So these guys are really battling for like 11 spots, and then those practice roster spots. So a guy like Cam knows his role is going to be on special team if he's going to be that 53rd man, 52nd man on this roster, So today he went out and he tried to earn that spot and make no doubt, in those coaches' eyes and in their minds that he wants that opportunity to be his. So if he has the same kind of output next week in the third game, that's going to be one of the hard decisions right there. that will be like either keep him up because of his special teams play or put him on practice roster. And if we need to activate him, bring him back up. But I think it'd be hard to, keep that guy off the 53 at this point because of what he does bring to the special teams fold.
Who else jumped out at you this week on special teams? Because, that's obviously something that's near and dear to Joe Judge's heart, being a former special teams coordinator. And, that's a unit that's kind of hard to predict because you have guys coming in and out of the lineup. And, it's a tough unit to really set.
And I'll be honest, like with the new rules of everything's getting kicked into the end zone, everything's like fair caught on, the punt return teams. It's really hard to evaluate who's going to make a good special teamer and who's not. Back in my day, everything came out because the returners were trying to make the team as a returner. So in preseason, all the returners caught the ball and tried to make a move and try to make something happen. And so you saw people on coverage teams like running down, trying to make tackles. Now, as soon as the ball comes off the punter's foot, you got the returner waving, it's going to be a fair catch. So everybody idles down and doesn't run downfield as hard. It's hard. Preseason for judging special teams, I'm not going to lie, has become a lot harder with the new kicking rules.
So that's why it's important, I guess, to be able to contribute on offense or defense, which is kind of goes back to, with David Sills, just for a moment, just going back to the offense. I mean, he's had a great summer as he did last year before his injury, but where do you put him? I mean, if he doesn't participate on special teams, there's no way he's going to, he's not going to get reps over Kenny Golladay and Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton and Kadarius Toney.
No, but again, if Golladay goes down and Sills is on your active, you're happy. You're happy, right? And I think Sills has special teams potential. I do. I just don't think right now Joe is asking him to do too much because he knows right now from the line of scrimmage he's asking for him to play almost the entire game. Sills didn't come out until the third quarter, I think, in this game. And last week was similar. He played the whole first half into the third, I think. I think he took the first series in the third last week too. So that's a lot you're asking for a young man in first two preseason games to come out and play. If you would add special teams on top of it and you have a 17-week season coming up, you want to make sure you don't overpress, especially receivers' legs in training camp when you have 17 weeks to come. And a guy like Sills can mock a lot of different receivers that your defense is going to play against. So his body style, his abilities can really help teach your defenders going up against him every day in one-on-ones and stuff will help your defenders become better. I think you can carve out a spot on special teams for him for sure.
Okay. Well, maybe something we'll see. I don't think he played any special team snaps off the top of my head this week, but I'd have to go back and check.
He has been. No.
Yeah. I'd have to go back. I know Joe has said that he has that capability. I don't know if he's done it in practice off the top of my head, but could be something he's holding back. Now, one other thing I want to ask you about, this is interesting because before the game, I think it was Rap Sheet of NFL Network said that the Giants have been getting a lot of trade inquiries about kicker Ryan Santoso. Santoso so far hasn't had any field goal attempts. He's just had, I think, two PATs, if I'm not mistaken. But let's talk about his kickoffs because, people say, well, why would anybody trade for Santoso? He hasn't tried any field goals. How, from a personnel man's perspective, when you're looking at adding a kicker and that you haven't seen in pressure situations like that, how much does kickoffs and him being able to boot him out of the end zone, does that factor into a decision whether to trade for a kicker, or is that not as important?
It's very important because you need to know leg strength. And if he's not kicking, leg strength wise, if he's not kicking from in game from 45 plus, right, then the only way you can grade it is what's his hang time and distance on his kickoffs. Now understand, most NFL teams are sending their college scouts to these NFL preseason games And in the preseason games, all these guys are warming up prior to kickoff. So he's getting looked at prior to just in his warm-ups. And people are watching that he's hitting 50, 55 yarders. He's got plenty of leg. He's got good range. He handled the wind well. All those things are getting reported back to their personnel offices. And pretty much every team has a representative at every one of these preseason games. So understand, like, you might not be doing it in game for us to see, but he's probably making impressions pre-game for the scouts to see.
That's a good point. That's something that I don't think, you look at the pressure situations, but that's really a good point in terms of the little nuances that are involved in scouting. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the Patriots, are looking to upgrade their kicking position. So
out of a barn the other day.
Yeah. So I think, there might potentially be something there. Who knows? I mean, Lord knows the Giants and the Patriots, they've got that good relationship. So I could see maybe something potentially developing there where maybe, I don't know, the Giants get a conditional pick for him or maybe a solid pick. Maybe they get the pick that they traded to Houston back, the 2023 sixth round pick that they had to give up to get Croson. So.
Well, it's always fun because I know a couple years ago in Carolina, we kept 2 kickers and people are like, why did you keep 2 kickers? And sure enough, because Marty traded one, afterwards and got a nice pick after week 1 when somebody really needed a kicker. So,
yeah,
sometimes you play the game, the personnel game, and you play it to win. You don't play it to win on the field that first week because you're still going to have, 5 or 6 guys inactive and people are still working their roster. So if you got a good poker chip like that, you might keep them an extra week just to squeeze an extra round out of that draft pick compensation.
But what's interesting is, everybody knows that Gano is going to be the kicker. So do you, as a personnel person, say, okay, well, we know you're going to cut this guy anyway? Or do you just say, you know what, I'm not risking it on the waiver wire. I want him. I'm going to go out and get him and give up what I need to.
We had Gano in Carolina, and I think the kid's name was Buckner, that now still kicking in the league, we had both of them. And Buckner, we could tell, had a hell of a leg. And there was discussion about, even maybe keeping Buckner over Gano and saving money, because that's the other end of this conversation is a guy like Gano costs you a lot of money. So, it's like, where do you pull the trigger? But, I think we wound up getting a 5th round pick or something for Buckner. And before the cut down day, we were only being offered like a 7th or a conditional 6th if the guy wound up making their team or whatever. But then we got a solid 5th. And so then Marty was like, okay, for a 5th, we'll let him go. And a lot of guys, you don't want to roll the dice. When you see somebody you need and it's a need fixed position like kicker or punter or long snapper where you need that one guy. I mean, if I'm the guy needing him, I'm wary of it's hard to find that on the street. So let's just go pull the trigger and, go up around and get the guy we need.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Definitely. I mean, there's a lot of layers, obviously, to personnel building, roster building, and all that stuff that I don't think we in the media necessarily take into consideration. So thanks for that insight. That's valuable stuff. That's why I love having you on, my friend.
Oh, no, I love being on. Like I said, the chess match is always going in personnel. You always got to move a pawn or a rookie or something because, you got an injury. Like, look at the Jets, the poor Jets, right? They go into this weekend having a pretty good roster. They come out, they're looking at a whole different team now.
Yeah.
So, they got to go do some fixing and get that going over there. And, everybody has, injuries this week. There's a lot more in week 2. I think next week you'll see even more because guys realize it's their last opportunity to make an impression to really before cuts. And I want to say, didn't they just go from didn't they just cut 5 guys this week, each roster? They went from 90 to 85. Mm-hmm. Now they got to go from 85 down to 80.
80. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when people saw those lockers get cleaned out, that coal went up their butt and, that pressure started getting applied. And so that's why I think you saw some injuries this week as people started playing a little harder. And after the next 5 guys go, you're going to see even more next week because people are going to be like, this is my last chance to make an impression on these coaches.
Indeed. And now next week, obviously, the Giants will have a semi-dress rehearsal. I think the plan, at least the initial plan I'm hearing, is that the starters will play about a half's worth of football. We may or may not see Saquon Barkley. I don't think we'll see him in a preseason game. Maybe we'll see him in the joint practices if they're able to have them, that is, this week, because of the storm that's ripping through New England. But there's going to be a lot to talk about, obviously, after that game. And then we've got the roster cuts that we'll go over. So, David, plenty of football still coming up for us to talk about here on the Locked On Giants podcast. As always, I appreciate your insight. And we'll do this again next week, I assume?
I hope so. You stay safe up there.
Thank you. Thank you. We're doing well. We got rained on, but we're doing well otherwise. So, all right, Giant fans, that is going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. Don't forget, tomorrow is Twitter Tuesday. Get your questions in. You can send them to lockedongiantspodcast@gmail.com. You can put them in the comments section if you're watching this on YouTube, or you can just text them. Tweet them to me, not text them, tweet them to me at Patricia_Traina. Make sure you tag them Ask P Train and get those in as soon as you can, because tomorrow night I'm going to be looking to tape the podcast around 7:00 so that I have it ready for first thing just after midnight tomorrow. So, all right, for David Turner, I am Patricia Traina. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. We will talk to you again tomorrow.